So Ali Baba pushed 6. When the elevator reached the 5th floor, Mr. Salmon sighed. He did not get out. Instead, he leaned over and pushed 7, which was his correct floor. Now, Ali Baba was more suspicious than ever. What was this man up to? CPA, Chocolate Pastry Association? Communist Party of America? Ali Baba stood looking at his bearded neighbor. The elevator reached the 6th floor, and Ali Baba got out quickly. He knew he had to do something, but he didn't know what. He was convinced that while he'd been buying olives, important American secrets had been delivered to Kelly of Kelly's Deli. Health salad instead of cake. It had to mean something. Mrs. Bernstein was waiting patiently for the olives. I have to slice them up and mix them in the casserole, she said as she took the bag from her son. She tried to open the narrow jar. Her face turned quite red with effort, but she did not succeed. Ali Baba watched as she tapped the sides of the lid with a knife, and then she tried to turn the lid, and again she failed. Next she ran hot water over the jar, but it didn't seem to make any difference. The lid refused to come off. Ali Baba grinned. Maybe he wouldn't have to pick olives out of his supper after all. You try, said his mother. Maybe you will have better luck. It wasn't fair to ask him to prove his superior strength by opening a jar of olives that he wished he didn't have to eat. But in the end, it didn't matter. Although he put all his might into it, Ali Baba also failed to open the jar of olives. Mrs. Bernstein sighed. Your father won't be home until 6, she said. I need this jar open now. Do you want me to take it back to Kelly's Deli? Asked Ali. It would be embarrassing to have to ask Mr. Kelly to open the jar for him. Perhaps Mr. Salmon would be in the store passing some new message. I have a better idea, said Mrs. Bernstein. Mr. Salmon works at Holmes. He should be upstairs now. Take this jar up and ask if he can open for us. Mr. Salmon, yes, you know. He lives right above us in apartment 7G. Of course, Ali Baba knew that. He just couldn't imagine asking an enemy agent to open a jar of olives. Still, it would be a good chance to peek into his apartment. Ali Baba took the jar from his mother and walked up the flight of stairs to apartment 7G. He rang the doorbell and waited. Who is it? Called Mr. Salmon from inside. He opened the little peephole in the door to look out. Perhaps he was expecting another spy. Ali Baba waved the jar of olives so that Mr. Salmon could see it. My mother asked if you could open this. The door opened, and Mr. Salmon looked much fatter than when he wasn't wearing a jacket. He looked too fat to be a spy, but maybe that was part of his disguise. Who would expect a flat, slow-moving man like him to be a CPA? Surprisingly, Mr. Salmon was strong enough to open the jar. He removed the lid, then removed one of the olives too, and he popped it into his mouth. Just a small payment, he said as he chewed it up, and then he took another. I don't like olives, said Ali Baba. Unfortunately, I like everything, Mr. Salmon said with a sigh, and that is my downfall. Ali Baba stood in the doorway and wondered what Mr. Salmon meant. Did his downfall mean he was going to jail? Had someone else detected him passing secret messages at Kelly's Deli? I joined OA, but it hasn't helped me at all, Mr. Salmon explained, and he took another olive, then handed the jar to Ali Baba. What is OA? Asked Ali Baba. Since Mr. Salmon seemed ready to spill the beans, Ali Baba was not going to stand around guessing what those letters meant. Here's a nice picture of Ali Baba. And there, Mr. Salmon as he's eating the olives. And I got to say, his belly looks a little bit like mine. Overeaters Anonymous. That's what OE is. I've been put on a strict diet and I'm supposed to do exercise too. You probably noticed that sometimes I get off the elevator on the 5th floor. The doctor said if I walked up those 2 floors every time I come into the building, I'd burn up 5 calories in a week. 500 calories. I can consume 500 calories in 3 minutes. It's a losing battle. Mr. Salmon looked unhappy that Ali Baba handed him the olive jar again. Perhaps another olive would cheer him up. Excuse me. Mr. Salmon shook his head. Do you know how many calories are in one stuffed olive? No. 17, said Mr. Salmon. Well, that's not much, said Ali. True, but no one ever eats just one olive. They're like peanuts or potato chips. Eat one and you want another. Ali Baba knew that wasn't true. He loved peanuts and potato chips, but he could eat dozens of them. But he couldn't eat one olive. I'm a CPA. I work with numbers all day. But half the time when I'm supposed to be working on someone's accounts, I'm really counting up the number of calories I consume. I have charts and graphs and everything, and they all show just one thing. I eat too much. I don't think you're too fat, said Ali Baba, but he was lying. He was suddenly feeling sorry for this huge man who was always hungry. Tell that to my wife. The first thing she's going to ask me when she gets home from work is if I bought any cake at Kelly's Deli. Hey, said Ali Baba suddenly, would you be interested in running with me? I did some running the other day, and it was fun. I thought I'd go running in Riverside Park, but my father said he didn't want me to go off running by myself. If we went together, I wouldn't be alone, and you would lose a lot of weight. You know, that's not a bad idea, said Mr. Salmon. I even bought a pair of running shoes once, but mostly I wear them when I go to the deli. You'll never lose that weight that way, said Ali Baba. I know, said Mr. Salmon. I guess I better take these to my mother, said Ali. And he suddenly realized that he was still holding the olive jar in his hand. Mr. Salmon nodded. Sorry if I chewed your ear off, he said. Ali Baba rubbed his ears. It's okay, he said. You helped me solve a mystery. He knew that the chocolate cake and cheesecake were not part of a secret code after all. They just meant that Mr. Salmon loved to eat. Really. What sort of mystery was that? Never mind, said Ali Baba. Can you just tell me what CPA means? Sure, said Mr. Salmon. I'm an accountant. CPA means Certified Public Accountant. Oh, thanks. And thanks for opening the jar, too. I'll ring your bell when I get home from school tomorrow. And we could go running then if you want. Perfect, said Mr. Salmon. Ali Baba Bernstein walked back down the stairs with the half-empty jar of olives. It was a relief to know that his neighbor still wasn't an enemy agent after all. Still, he was a little sorry, too. It had been exciting to consider the possibility, but at least he found himself a running partner, and who knew? Perhaps when he was out running, he'd find another mystery to solve. That's the end of chapter 2. Now we'll start chapter 3, called Ali Baba Bernstein, King for a Day. On the Tuesday in November that Ali Baba was 9 years, 5 months, and 27 days old, school was closed. It was election day. And while citizens aged 18 and over were voting and the teachers at his school were holding an all-day conference, the students were free to do as they wished. At least that's what Ali Baba thought. His mother had a different idea. We're going shopping today, she said when he was eating his breakfast. You'll need new underwear and I need new towels. I want to play with Roger today, Ali said. I don't want to go shopping. You played with Roger yesterday and you'll see him in school tomorrow. But today's a school holiday. Who wants to buy underwear on a holiday? Ali Baba grumbled. It didn't seem fair that his mother should make plans for him. Sometimes he wished he were king of the world and no one could tell him what to do. It won't be so bad, his mother tried to assure him. We'll have lunch out, and we're going to be part of the New York where you've never been, and maybe you'll see some new things. New things? What new things? He said crossly. New underwear? One never knows. Just keep your eyes open, said Mrs. Bernstein. Ali Baba always kept his eyes open except when he was sleeping, but his mother was right. Even though there was nothing he hated more than shopping, going to a new neighborhood might prove revealing. There was always the possibility of observing some mysterious goings-on that he would have missed had he stayed home. And so with that thought, Ali Baba finished his bowl of cornflakes and finished his complaining. They took a subway to Lower Manhattan. I heard of a store there that has wonderful bargains, Mrs. Bernstein told her son over the rumble of the subway train. Ali Baba nodded his head as he looked around. The train was filled with people going off to unknown destinations. He wondered if anyone else in the subway car was in need of new underwear. He wondered if anyone was off on a secret mission. Most of the people looked half asleep, but perhaps that was the way you had to look if you were on a mission. If you look alert and eager, you might give yourself away. They got off on the train at Houston Street and walked 2 blocks. Ali smiled to himself as they passed several Chinese restaurants. Maybe they could go to one of those for lunch. He thought of himself crunching down on some crisp Chinese noodles, and he licked his lips. Mrs. Bernstein stopped and pulled out a piece of paper from her pocket. On it she had written the address of the store she was looking for. "Oh, it must be at the end of this street," she said, and sure enough, in another moment, they reached their destinations. Excuse me. It was called Barney Bargains, the home of the Underwear King. Now, who would have imagined a king on this street, thought Ollie as his mother opened the door and motioned for him to follow. Inside, behind the counter, was a balding man with a big smile. Ali Baba supposed he was Barney the Underwear King, even though he was only wearing a plaid sport shirt and a pair of slacks. He always assumed that kings wore flowing robes and crowns on their heads. "My son needs new underwear," Mrs. Bernstein said. "Underpants and undershirts. He needs socks, too." The king smiled at Ollie. "Young man, take off your jacket and let me see what size you need." "Yes, Your Majesty," Ollie replied as he took his jacket off. Mrs. Bernstein gave her son a poke. "Behave yourself," she said. But the Underwear King beamed. "I like you," he said to Ollie. "You have a sense of humor. That's a good thing to have, believe me." Ollie nodded at the Underwear King, took a tape measure and held it against his shoulders, and then measured his waist. "Here you are," he said, showing Miss Bernstein packages of underwear and underpants and shirts. "Now, as to socks, you want 100% cotton, or do you want nylon? There's a special on cotton tube socks," he added. 3 pairs for the price of 2 today only." "We'll take 6 pairs of the ones on sale," said Ollie's mother. "Smart woman," said King Barney. "Anything else? How about pajamas, t-shirts? What about a fancy dress shirt for a special occasion?" And this was Ollie as he's getting in the underwear with the Underwear King and his mom at the store looking at stuff. "I wear king-size underwear." "No, he doesn't need anything else today. What about you? Pantyhose, slips, bras? I have everything here at fantastic prices." "No, not today," said Mrs. Bernstein. "Perhaps I'll be back another time for those things. Your husband? He must need something. Shirt, socks, a bathrobe, a new tie?" "No, this is all," she said. "What do I owe you for these things?" The Underwear King began adding up the prices of the underwear and socks, and he showed Mrs. Bernstein the total, and she paid him. "Come back again soon," he said as they took the shopping bag. "Yes, Your Highness," said Ali Baba, bowing low. It wasn't every day that he met a king, even if it was a king of underwear. "Now the towel," said Mrs. Bernstein when they were back on the street. "Is there a towel king?" said Ollie. "Don't be silly. I was embarrassed the way you spoke to that man in the shop. He isn't a real king. I was afraid you were going to get down on your hands and knees and kiss his hand, the way you were acting." Ali Baba hit himself on the forehead. "I forgot," he said. "I saw it in a movie once, but I forgot to do it." "This is the United States. We don't have royalty here," said his mother. "That man is no more a king than you or I." Ali Baba didn't say anything, but he didn't agree with his mother. How could someone call himself a king if he wasn't? And of course they'd seen the Underwear King. They hadn't walked more than half a block when Ali spotted another Chinese restaurant, and the sign in the window said Egg Roll King. "Ah, look at that," said Ollie. "If the owner of that restaurant came from China, he could have been a king there." "In China they had emperors, not kings, and they don't have them anymore," said Mrs. Bernstein. Ollie was not convinced. He liked the idea that in this section of New York there was royalty. Ollie found the towel store incredibly dull. Who could enjoy an entire store filled with towels and sheets and pillowcases? There were some blankets, but none of those things were exciting. Ollie leaned against one of the counters and waited while his mother deliberated between sea blue towels and sky blue ones. Finally, she made a decision in favor of sea blue, only to discover that there were no matching washcloths left. What a waste of time, Ollie thought, and when the sky blue towels and washcloths were packaged and paid for, they walked out of the shop. "Where are we going to eat?" asked Ollie. "Soon," said Miss Bernstein. "I just want to look at that pocketbook store we passed on the way here." And that's where we're going to stop for now, boys and girls.